One lawmaker in Michigan wants to force landlords to accept tenants on a first come, first served basis, give them free lawyers during eviction proceedings, and offer relocation assistance to tenants if they ever face a safety issue in their housing. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and once again, it's coming out of the state of Michigan. So I mentioned some of the anti-landlord laws that they were trying to pass up in Michigan just about a week ago, right now, and now they're coming up with even more nonsense. And this is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what this lawmaker is thinking, trying to propose this stuff. I don't think it's going to pass, but this does tell you the kind of things that you can look forward to, the kind of anti-landlord legislation that is being pushed all throughout the entire country. And some of this stuff, it's so ridiculous that you're just kind of sitting there wondering, like, how exactly is this going to help anything? Okay, it's only going to make things worse. Now, I know they think, oh, well, this is going to make things better, but the real thing that this is going to do is make housing more expensive. It's going to make housing less available for those who need it. And it's going to punish the good landlords who are already doing everything right. The bad landlords, they're just going to continue to skate by. And, remember, the grand majority of landlords are good ones. So 99% of landlords are doing everything right. But we get caught up in this nonsense. We get caught up in all of these rules and regulations, and we get the book thrown at us, and it drives us out of business or it bankrupts us, okay? And that doesn't help anyone when a good landlord gets driven out of business. The only thing it's doing is leaving more opportunity out there for the few bad actors to continue to operate. Okay, so yeah, I'm not surprised that this sort of stuff is starting to come up in places outside of the coast, outside of the more liberal cities. But what I am going to say is that this is the stuff that we can start to look forward to in other places in the Midwest. Like outside of like Michigan, we can start to see this sort of stuff in places where I invest, in Missouri, in Nebraska, in Kansas, okay, in Iowa. These are the places right near where I live, and I wouldn't expect to see this sort of stuff here. These are known to be landlord-friendly places, but they have pockets where of just these groups of people who just hate us. They just hate us, and they're going to keep pushing and keep pushing, and eventually, this stuff might pass if we, rest on our laurels, as they say. Okay, so that's why I am very vigilant, and I say, hey, let's get the word out there that this stuff, it won't work. All right. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Okay, do you think these sort of laws are going to be seen more often in places that normally you would expect to have more property rights and be more landlord friendly? And do you think that eventually we're going to see just a shift throughout the entire country? Maybe we'll start to see federal laws that basically are legislating what we can do with our properties nationwide. Like the Biden administration was talking about nationwide rent control, and that was just a few months ago. I did a video on that topic, and we could see a lot more other laws similar to that. So it's scary. It's a scary place right now, and I don't know what exactly is going to happen in the next few years. Let's hope that we don't see nationwide rent control or nationwide eviction protections. Okay, we saw the nightmare of what happened during the eviction moratoriums put out by the CDC. And fortunately, the Supreme Court threw that nonsense out. But we could be looking forward to more of that pretty soon. But anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. This article is coming from Mackinac.org, and it says, Michigan politicians submit more bills hamstringing property owners. My background is partially in extremism, key sponsor says. Yeah, so one of the key sponsors, the lawmakers who is proposing this bill, says that they are an extremist. And it looks like they are. I'm an extremist too, but I'm an extreme capitalist, okay? I believe in free markets. So, I'm obviously going to disagree with a lot of this nonsense that they're proposing. So let's get into the article. My background is partially in extremism. Representative Emily Devendorf, a Democrat from Lansing, told WKR News recently while defending legislative proposals supported by a group of progressive lawmakers. Devendorf is the author and key sponsor of a series of housing bills and ideas that would upend the rental market in Michigan. This includes rent control and preventing landlords from using criminal background checks for renters. More bills were introduced recently, including so they're going to go over all the different proposals, and I kind of mentioned that at the very beginning of the video what some of them are, but a little more detail here. They also said the same lawmaker was, of course, proposing rent control and preventing background checks because they say it's not equitable. Oh, it's not equitable. It's not fair. It's not fair that people who they committed horrible crimes or have a little bit more difficulty finding housing. Yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, I don't fall for this nonsense. Okay, I just do not fall for it, and I suggest other people don't either. But let's get into the details of what the other proposals that this person is putting out there are. HB 5235 requires housing providers to accept renters on a first come, first served basis unless legally obligated not to, as in cases of low income housing. So imagine this, right? And when they talk about first come, first served basis, what they're saying is the very first person who puts in an application, you have to accept as a tenant. I believe they have a similar law in Seattle that has already passed, right? And if a landlord does not accept you, this isn't the way that any business actually operates, any rental property business. So what I do is I go out, right? I have an open house or I accept applications or do showings, right? And I'll collect all the applications. And then maybe after a week, 7 days, I'll take a look at every application that I received, right? And go through them, one at a time, figure out which tenant is the best qualified. And, I usually don't just choose one tenant. I'll usually choose at least three because sometimes people they move on, they find somewhere else to live, and you want to be able to still have a good candidate available. Okay. And what I do is I put all of my applications in order of best to worst. Now, what I also do is I throw out people who have automatic disqualifiers. So that's people with like evictions on their record. That might be people who are registered sex offenders or people with serious criminal histories. That might be people with horrible, like debt and credit that is beyond the scope of what I want to have to deal with. Okay. These people, their applications are basically instantly thrown out by me. Okay. I don't even waste my time looking at their other qualifications. Okay. People who do not meet my income threshold, they also get thrown out. If you don't make at least 3 times the monthly rent in your income, you can't afford to live in one of my places. So I don't even waste my time looking at your application. But basically, after all those qualifications are met, then you have, a stack of people, and then you can rank those people in order of best to worst, right? So just to give you an example, if the rent is $1,000 a month and you have one candidate who makes $3,000 a month, but then you have another candidate who makes $10,000 a month, well, the candidate who makes $10,000 a month is much better able to afford the rent, and therefore I would want that candidate in my unit over the one who only makes $3,000 a month, even though both of them qualify according to my standards, right? And the reason being that I want the best chance possible that I don't have late rent, that the bills are paid on time every month, and that the tenant will be able to pay the bills, okay, and keep the place in good shape. And so that's one of the factors. I don't want someone who just barely scrapes by with the minimum standards unless I have to take that person. I want the best qualified tenant, or and this is obvious. And yet they want to force you to take the one who just barely meets the minimum standards. And it's awful. It's an absolute awful idea for business, and I don't think landlords should be forced to do that. But let's continue. HB 5237, the state must provide taxpayer-funded legal services for those filing lawsuits against landlords. Everyone would receive or would have access to brief legal assistance, and anyone under 200% of the poverty line would receive full legal representation in civil litigation against housing providers. So the way most of them these cases work is, oh well, we're going to be giving free lawyers to tenants during eviction proceedings, right? But this actually sounds like if the tenant wants to sue the landlord, and we're not even talking about legal eviction proceedings, right? Then it seems like the taxpayers would have to pay for free lawyers so that the tenant can sue the landlord for whatever reason they choose. That's a horrible idea. Okay, especially since we already live in a society where there's too many frivolous lawsuits being filed, and now you're going to allow tenants to have taxpayer-funded lawyers to file a bunch of frivolous lawsuits. Sounds idiotic. HB 5239, landlords must pay relocation assistance equal to 3 times their monthly rent to any tenant if a health or safety hazard of the property has been caused or allowed by its owner, right? Now, I don't agree with this at all, okay? Because, first of all, if there is a health and safety issue, the landlord should be given the opportunity to fix it. Okay, a lot of issues they pop up, and it's not something that is the fault of the landlord. Okay, stuff breaks, stuff it gets older as time passes, right? And I've fixed stuff that like mold issues in my properties that have come back, and it's not my fault, and I shouldn't have to pay 3 times the monthly rent and relocation expenses when I still spent, or I spent hundreds of dollars sending somebody out there to fix that problem. Okay, as I wasn't trying to cause the mold issue, but older house built in the year 1900, so the house over 100 years old, and it's going to have a little bit more dampness in the basement than some of these newer properties. It's just the way things are. Okay, now if the landlord isn't doing everything possible to try to fix the problem, well, there's already laws in place to address that sort of issue. So, who are you going to be punishing in this sort of situation? You're going to be punishing good landlords like me who already were going to try to fix the problem and do everything right. And now we're getting hit twice because we have to pay, hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of relocation expenses. Dumb, okay? You're just going to drive small mom and pop landlords out of the business. They're not going to want to have to deal with this nonsense. Drive good landlords out. HB 5240 requires property owners to afford the right of first refusal to their tenants or a tenants association. If the tenant or an association offers a price that is at least as favorable as the offer from another purchaser, or at least the appraised value of the property, the landlord would have to sell the property to the tenant or association. Man, I hate these laws of first refusal, okay? Basically, telling you that you can't sell the property to the person you want to sell it to. If I want to sell my house to my brother, this is just an example, right? I can't because the tenant has the first right of refusal. So I can't even sell it to my own brother. My brother needs a place to live. I'm like, hey, I'll sell you one of my houses. Nope, nope. Tenant's like, nope, you can't do that. I'm buying it. No, I'm selling it to my brother. Nope. See, when you start messing with people's property rights like that, what it really tells people is, hey, I don't want to be in this business. I don't want to have to deal with this nonsense. I don't want the government involved in every single thing that I do, dictating how much my rents are, who I can evict, who I have to rent to. And the end result is that a lot of landlords are just going to say, you know what, I give up. I'm not investing in the state of Michigan at all. Okay? There's plenty of places where I can invest where I don't have to deal with this nonsense, and they treat me with respect. They give me the property rights that I deserve, and I'm going there. And so what happens? The people in Michigan, they get less choice, less selection, and they pay a lot more for it.